Welcome back to Dream Retro, where we drift back to simpler times and relive the moments that shaped us. Close your eyes for a moment and travel back with me. Back to a time when the internet was still young, still wild, still discovering what it wanted to be. A time before smartphones lived in our pockets, before social media became a verb, before we all became curators of our own digital museums. This is a story about a place that existed in that strange, liminal space between the old internet and the new world we live in today. This is the story of MySpace. But it's more than just the story of a website. It's the story of a generation learning to express themselves online for the first time. It's about awkward teenage years immortalized in digital amber. It's about the sound of a dial-up modem giving way to broadband connections. It's about glittery text and auto-playing songs and friendship rankings that caused real drama in school hallways. For those who were there, MySpace wasn't just a social network. It was where you learn HTML by copying and pasting code you didn't understand. It was where you discovered new music before anyone else you knew. It was where you crafted an identity, pixel by pixel, song by song, top 8 friend by top 8 friend. It was messy and chaotic and personal in ways that social media would never quite be again. This is a story about innovation and imitation, about being first and being forgotten, about capturing lightning in a bottle and watching it slowly dim. It's about Tom Anderson, who became everyone's first friend. It's about Tilla Tequila before reality TV, about Arctic Monkeys before they were stadium stars, about teenagers with computers and too much time learning to code without knowing they were learning. But most of all, this is a story about what it felt like to be there. Not just the facts and figures, the business deals and corporate acquisitions, though those matter too. This is about the actual experience of logging on, of hearing that familiar sound, of seeing your profile the way you designed it, of waiting for someone to comment on your away message, of obsessing over your top 8, of falling in love to the song that auto-played on someone's page. So let's go back. Back before Instagram filters and Twitter threads and TikTok dances. Back to when the internet felt infinite and intimate all at once. Back to when you could make your own corner of the digital world look exactly how you wanted it to look, even if that meant neon green text on a black background with falling stars, and a song that started playing the moment someone visited your page. This is the story of MySpace. The story of how it rose to become the most popular website on the entire internet, and how it fell from that height faster than anyone could have imagined. But more importantly, this is a story of what it meant to millions of people who were just trying to figure out who they were, one profile customization at a time. To understand MySpace, you first need to understand the internet it was born into. The early 2000s internet was a different beast entirely from what we know today. It was slower, clunkier, more fragmented, but it was also more creative, more personal, more like a frontier than a shopping mall. In 2002 and 2003, when MySpace was being conceived, the internet was still largely composed of individual websites. If you wanted to have a presence online, you needed to know how to build a website, or at least how to use a website builder, services like GeoCities. And AngelFire allowed people to create personal web pages, usually organized by themes and interests into virtual neighborhoods. These sites were chaotic masterpieces of web design, featuring backgrounds that made text nearly impossible to read, animated GIFs that never stopped moving, and hit counters that proudly displayed how many visitors you'd had. But personal websites had a problem. They were isolated. You could build the most amazing personal page, complete with photos of your cat and your opinions about your favorite bands, but how would anyone find it? There was no central hub, no news feed, no algorithm suggesting content. You relied on web rings, link exchanges, and hoping someone would stumble across your site through a search engine. Forums and message boards provided some sense of community. If you were into a particular TV show, band, hobby, or interest, chances are there was a forum where like-minded people gathered. These were organized by topics and threads, and they fostered real communities, but they were fragmented. Your identity on a video game forum was completely separate from your identity on a music forum. There was no unified you across the internet. Then there was AOL Instant Messenger, known universally as AIM. By the early 2000s, AIM had become the primary way teenagers and young adults communicated online. You'd rush home from school and immediately sign on to see who else was online. You'd craft away messages that were really just passive-aggressive statements about your crush, or lyrics from your favorite emo band. You'd spend hours in chat windows, conversations punctuated by emoticons and BRB and G2G. Your screen name was an identity in itself, usually some combination of your nickname, birth year, and something you thought sounded cool when you were 13. AIM had buddy lists, which was perhaps the first mainstream way people organized their online social connections. But it was primarily for one-on-one or small group conversations. It wasn't a place to broadcast yourself to the world. It wasn't a place where you could build a profile that said, "This is who I am." The early 2000s also saw the rise of blogging. Services like LiveJournal and Blogger allowed people to keep online diaries. Sharing their thoughts with anyone who cared to read LiveJournal in particular had a strong social component. You could add friends, leave comments, and join communities based on shared interests. For many young people, LiveJournal was their introduction to the idea of having an audience online, of writing something and having strangers respond to it. It was confessional, often angsty, and surprisingly intimate. People shared things on their LiveJournals that they'd never say out loud. Then there was Friendster. Launched in 2002, Friendster was one of the first true social networking sites. It was built on the concept of connecting friends and friends of friends. You could create a profile with your photo and information about yourself, and you could link to your friends' profiles. It was revolutionary at the time. Finally, there was a central place online where you could say, "This is me," and connect with people you actually knew in real life. Friendster grew incredibly quickly. By 2003, it had millions of users. But it also had serious problems. The site was slow, often painfully so. As more people joined, the servers couldn't keep up. Pages would take forever to load, if they loaded at all. The company struggled to scale its infrastructure fast enough to match its user growth. There were also limitations in what you could do with your profile. Friendster wanted to maintain a clean, consistent look across the site, which meant users couldn't really customize their pages the way they might want to. Still, Friendster proved something important. People wanted to be online together. They wanted a place where they could present themselves, connect with friends, and explore a network of social connections. They wanted to take the fragmented pieces of their online life, their personal website, their forum posts, their AM conversations, their blog entries, and bring them together in one place. The internet in 2003 was hungry for something new. Personal websites were too isolated, forums were too fragmented, AEM was too private. Friendster had the right idea, but couldn't execute. The stage was set for something that could bring it all together, something that could give people a central place to express themselves, while still allowing the creativity and personalization that made the early internet special. Someone just needed to build it. And in a small office in Santa Monica, California, a team of programmers was about to do exactly that. MySpace was born out of imitation and innovation in equal measure. In 2003, a team of employees at eUniverse, an internet marketing company in Santa Monica, saw what Friendster was doing and recognized both its potential and its problems. Among them was Tom Anderson, a musician and tech enthusiast, who had become the face of MySpace, and Chris DeWolf, a businessman who understood how to turn a good idea into a successful company. The story goes that several eUniverse employees, including Anderson and DeWolf, were avid Friendster users. They loved the concept but were frustrated by the execution. The site was slow. It kept crashing. It was difficult to customize. And perhaps most importantly, Friendster's management was making decisions that seemed to actively work against what users wanted. They were deleting fake profiles of celebrities and fictional characters that users had created, even though those profiles were popular and driving engagement. They were maintaining strict control over how profiles looked, preventing the kind of personal expression that users craved. Anderson, DeWolf, and their team decided they could do better. They would create a social networking site that learned from Friendster's mistakes. It would be faster, more stable, and more scalable. But most importantly, it would give users freedom. Freedom to customize their profiles however they wanted. Freedom to express themselves without arbitrary restrictions. Freedom to make their corner of the internet truly their own. The technical foundation of MySpace was built quickly. The team used Cold Fusion, a web application development platform that allowed for rapid development. This meant they could get a working site up and running in a matter of weeks rather than months. They focused on making sure the infrastructure could scale, learning from Friendster's failures to handle growth. They knew that if they got this right, they could handle millions of users without the site grinding to a halt. MySpace officially launched in August 2003. At first, it was just another social networking site, similar to Friendster, but faster and more reliable. You could create a profile with your photo, age, location, and interests. You could connect with friends. You could leave comments on people's profiles. You could send messages. All the basic features you'd expect were there. But MySpace had something else, something that would prove to be the key to its success. It allowed users to customize their profiles using HTML and CSS. This wasn't a planned feature at first. It was more of an oversight. The input fields for profile information didn't strip out HTML code, which meant that anyone with basic web coding knowledge could add custom formatting, colors, images, and even layout changes to their profile. And crucially, you could embed music players and videos. When the MySpace team realized users were doing this, they faced a decision. They could lock it down, prevent custom code, and maintain a uniform look across the site like Friendster did. Or they could embrace it. They chose to embrace it. This single decision would define what MySpace became. Tom Anderson understood musicians and artists. Before MySpace, he'd been involved in various music and internet projects. He recognized that the ability to customize profiles wasn't just a neat feature. It was fundamental to self-expression. The internet had always been about creating your own space, making it look how you wanted. GeoCities pages might have been ugly, but they were personal. They were yours. MySpace could offer that same sense of ownership, while also providing the social networking features that people wanted. The early days of MySpace were scrappy and experimental. The site had bugs and rough edges, but it also had momentum. Early adopters were mostly people connected to eUniverse and their friends, but word spread quickly. Young people, especially teenagers and 20-somethings, started signing up. They liked that it was faster than Friendster. They loved that they could customize their profiles. Anderson made himself the default first friend for every new user. When you signed up for MySpace, Tom was automatically your friend. This wasn't just a technical convenience. It was a stroke of genius. Tom's profile photo, a white t-shirt, slightly disheveled hair, a friendly smile, became one of the most recognizable images on the internet. Thanks for the ad became a joke and a meme before memes were really a thing. Tom was everyone's friend, and somehow that made MySpace feel more welcoming, more personal than a faceless corporation. By the end of 2003, MySpace had gained significant traction, but it was still small compared to Friendster. However, the foundations were in place for explosive growth. The site was stable, it was fast, and most importantly, it gave users what they wanted: a place to express themselves freely, connect with friends, and be part of a growing community. The team at MySpace worked around the clock to add features and improvements. They listened to user feedback. They fixed bugs quickly. They understood that they were building something more than just a website. They were building a platform that belonged to its users. Every decision was made with that in mind. Should they restrict something? Only if it was causing technical problems or creating safety issues. Otherwise, let users do what they want. This philosophy of freedom would carry MySpace to heights that no one, probably not even Anderson and DeWolf, could have fully anticipated. Within months, MySpace wasn't just growing, it was exploding, and it was about to change the internet forever. If you were a teenager or young adult in 2004, you remember when MySpace went from being something your tech-savvy friend told you about to being something everyone was talking about. The growth was exponential. 1 week, a handful of people at your school had profiles. The next week, everyone did. By 2005, not being on MySpace was like not having a cell phone. You were missing out on an entire world of social interaction. The numbers tell part of the story. In December 2004, MySpace had about 5 million users. By December 2005, that number had jumped to 27 million. By December 2006, it was over 100 million. But statistics don't capture what it felt like to watch this happen in real time. It felt like everyone you knew was suddenly living a parallel life online, and you needed to be part of it or risk being left behind. What made MySpace so compelling wasn't just that it connected you with friends. The internet could already do that. What made MySpace special was that it gave you a way to broadcast your identity. Your profile wasn't just a list of facts about you. It was a carefully curated representation of who you were, or at least who you wanted people to think you were. In 2004 and 2005, MySpace became the default answer to the question, how can I find you online? Before Facebook required your real name, and before Instagram made everyone a photographer, MySpace was where you existed on the internet. You'd meet someone at a party, at school, through friends, and instead of asking for their phone number, you'd ask for their MySpace. You'd go home, send them a friend request, and wait anxiously to see if they accepted. The site's features expanded rapidly during this period. In addition to basic profiles and messaging, MySpace added photo albums, allowing users to upload multiple pictures. This seems basic now, but in 2004, it was significant. Suddenly, you weren't just seeing one profile photo. You were seeing someone's collection of photos, often carefully chosen to present a certain image. There were party photos, artsy black and white shots, pictures with friends, and of course the infamous bathroom mirror selfies taken with digital cameras. Bulletins became another key feature. These were posts you could send out to all your friends at once. They appeared in a chronological feed, and they were used for everything. Asking questions, sharing funny content, chain letters that promised bad luck if you didn't repost, surveys where you'd answer dozens of questions about yourself. Bulletins were chaotic and wonderful. They were like a primitive version of a social media feed, but more personal, because they only came from people you'd actually friended. MySpace groups allowed users to create and join communities based on shared interests. These were similar to forums but integrated into the MySpace experience. There were groups for bands, TV shows, cities, schools, random interests, inside jokes. Groups could be public or private, and they ranged from completely serious to absolutely ridiculous. But perhaps the most defining feature of MySpace during its golden age was the top friends list, which everyone referred to as the top 8. Your top 8 were the friends whose profile pictures appeared prominently on your profile. This created a social hierarchy that was visible to everyone who visited your page. Who you put in your top 8 was a statement. Your best friend better be in there. Your romantic partner definitely needed to be number 1, or there would be drama. The decision of who to include and in what order caused countless arguments, hurt feelings, and complicated social negotiations. The top 8 was simultaneously one of the most brilliant and most stressful features ever created. It gamified friendship in a way that felt both trivial and deeply important. You'd agonize over the order. You'd notice if someone moved you down or removed you entirely. You'd rearrange your own list strategically, sometimes to reflect genuine feelings and sometimes to send a message. When MySpace eventually allowed users to expand beyond 8 friends, it solved some problems, but also diluted what made it so compelling. The constraint of 8 was perfect. It forced you to make choices, and those choices meant something. During 2004 to 2006, MySpace also became incredibly important for business and marketing. Though often in ways the company didn't initially plan, musicians discovered that they could reach fans directly through MySpace. Brands realized they could create profiles and engage with young consumers. Local businesses found that having a MySpace presence helped them connect with customers. The line between personal profiles and professional ones was blurry, and that was part of the appeal. In July 2005, News Corporation, Rupert Murdoch's media conglomerate, purchased MySpace for $580 million. At the time, many people questioned whether a social networking site was worth that much money. In retrospect, it was one of the greatest bargains in internet history. By 2006, MySpace was the most visited website in the United States, surpassing even Google. For a brief moment, it was the center of the internet universe. The acquisition brought resources and legitimacy. News Corp invested in infrastructure, making the site faster and more reliable. They expanded the staff. They pushed for growth in international markets. MySpace became a phenomenon not just in the United States, but around the world. For users, the News Corp acquisition was mostly invisible. The site still worked the same way. Tom was still everyone's friend. You could still customize your profile until it was an unreadable mess of colors and animations. The culture of MySpace remained unchanged, which was crucial. Users didn't want a corporate social network. They wanted their space messy and personal and theirs. This was the golden age. This was when MySpace felt unstoppable. This was when it seemed like it would be part of the internet landscape forever. Like Google or Amazon, everyone was on it. It was where culture happened. It was where trends started. It was where you found out about new music, where you kept in touch with friends, where you presented yourself to the world. But golden ages never last forever. And even in 2006, as MySpace reached its peak, the seeds of its decline were already being planted. Most people just didn't notice yet. Let's talk about what it actually felt like to use MySpace. Not the business story, not the numbers, but the lived experience of being a MySpace user in the mid-2000s. Because if you were there, you remember. And if you weren't, you need to understand what made it so special to so many people. Your MySpace profile was your digital bedroom. It was the space you controlled completely in a world where teenagers and young adults had very little control over anything. You couldn't change your school, your family, your town, but you could change your MySpace background from black to hot pink with silver glitter in about 30 seconds. The profile customization was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, it allowed for incredible creativity and personal expression. People learned HTML and CSS just by trying things, copying code from layout websites, and seeing what worked. It was probably the most widespread unintentional coding education in history. Thousands of teenagers learned the basics of web development because they wanted their MySpace page to look cool. On the other hand, many profiles were absolutely atrocious from a design perspective. Neon text on neon backgrounds, tiling images that made the page take forever to load glittery cursors, auto-playing songs that blasted at full volume, falling animations of stars, hearts, or dollar signs, multiple conflicting color schemes, text boxes that scrolled because the content didn't fit, profiles that were essentially unusable because you couldn't read anything or find the content you wanted. But here's the thing. Nobody cared that profiles were ugly, or rather, the ugliness was part of the charm. Your MySpace page said something about you. If you had a black background with red text and an auto-playing dashboard confessional song, everyone knew exactly who you were. If your page was covered in pink glitter and photos of you with your friends, that communicated something too. If you had a minimalist design with carefully chosen colors and a tasteful indie band playing, you were making a statement about being above the chaos. there were websites entirely dedicated to providing MySpace layouts. Sites like myspacelayouts.com and pimpmyspace.com offered pre-made designs that you could copy and paste into your profile. These ranged from professional-looking templates to absolutely wild designs. You could have a gothic castle background, a tropical beach, your favorite band's album art, abstract patterns, anything. Some people change their layouts constantly, following trends or their moods. Others found one they liked and stuck with it for years. Then there was the profile song. Every profile could have one song that would start playing automatically when someone visited. Choosing this song was a critical decision. It needed to represent you. It needed to be cool. It needed to be a song you wouldn't be embarrassed about a week later, though that rarely worked out. The profile song announced your arrival before anyone even read your About Me section. Of course, the auto-playing music created chaos. You'd be browsing MySpace late at night, clicking through profiles, when suddenly a loud song would start playing. You'd scramble to find the pause button or quickly close the tab before your parents heard. Or you'd be at school, at the library, sneaking onto MySpace during study hall, and someone's profile would start playing music, immediately alerting everyone to what you were doing. The About Me section was where you told your story. Some people wrote paragraphs about their interests, beliefs, and personality. Others kept it minimal, maybe just a quote or song lyrics that resonated with them. The About Me section was often written in third person, which was a strange convention. John loves skateboarding and hanging with friends. He listens to punk rock and hates drama. As if you were writing your own biography or character description. Then there were the surveys. Oh, the surveys. Bulletin surveys were a massive part of MySpace culture. These were long lists of questions about yourself that you'd fill out and post as a bulletin for all your friends to see. What's your name? What's your birthday? Single or taken? What are you wearing? What are you listening to? Who was the last person you talked to? Who do you have a crush on? What's your favorite color? They could be 50, 100, even 200 questions long. People would spend hours filling them out and reading their friends' answers. It was a way to learn about people, to procrastinate, to feel like you were sharing something meaningful, even when most of the questions were superficial. The comments section on your profile was crucial social currency. You wanted people to comment. You wanted your page to look active and popular. Friends would leave comments saying, "Hey, thanks for the ad," or "OMG, we need to hang out soon," or just inside jokes and song lyrics. Some people would leave graphic comments, little images with messages like "best friends forever" or "you're awesome." People would bomb their friends' pages, leaving dozens of comments in a row. Having a lot of comments made you look popular and well-liked. An empty comments section was social death. Photo albums were another big deal. You'd carefully curate your albums, organizing photos by theme or event. There were party photos, vacation photos, photos with friends, photos of yourself trying to look artistic or attractive or cool. You'd tag people in photos, which would link to their profiles. This was exciting when someone tagged you in a good photo, and stressful when they tagged you in a bad one. You could untag yourself, but everyone knew you were the one who did it. Angles were important in MySpace photos. The MySpace angle became famous, holding the camera up high and angling it down, which was supposed to be more flattering mirror selfies, often taken in bathrooms. were ubiquitous. People would make duck faces, peace signs, or try to look moody and mysterious. Looking at MySpace photos now is like opening a time capsule of mid-2000s aesthetics. Side-swept bangs, lip rings, band t-shirts, popped collars, trucker hats, those thick white belts with pyramid studs, fingerless gloves, all black everything. The messaging system was like email, but more casual and immediate than actual email. You'd send messages to friends, maybe to ask a question, make plans, or just say hi. The inbox would show you how many unread messages you had, and checking those messages was always exciting. Who messaged you? What did they say? Maybe it was your crush. Maybe it was just your friend being random. Either way, you had to check. Mood was a feature where you could select or type how you were feeling. It was displayed prominently on your profile. John is feeling bored, or Sarah is feeling blessed, or Mike is feeling like crying. It was an early form of status updates, a way to broadcast your emotional state to your entire friend list. People changed their moods frequently, sometimes multiple times a day. It was performative, but also genuine. You wanted people to know how you felt, even if you didn't want to directly tell them. The online-offline indicator showed whether you were currently on MySpace. This created a weird social dynamic. If you saw someone was online, you might message them expecting a quick response. If they didn't respond, but you could see they were still online, you'd wonder if they were ignoring you. Going offline to appear unavailable became a strategy. Some people would stay logged in all the time, even when they weren't really there, just to appear active and engaged. MySpace also had a dark side. It was where cyberbullying happened, where fake profiles were created to mock or harass people, where nude photos got shared without consent, where predators sometimes lurked. Parents worried about their kids on MySpace, though most parents didn't really understand what MySpace was. News stories warned about the dangers of online social networks. Schools blocked MySpace on their computers. There were legitimate concerns about privacy and safety, especially for younger users who didn't fully understand that everything they posted was potentially public. But for millions of users, MySpace was overwhelmingly positive. It was where you connected with friends, where you expressed yourself, where you felt seen and heard. It was where you learned about new music, discovered new interests, found communities of people who liked the same obscure things you liked. It was where you flirted with your crush by leaving carefully worded comments on their profile. It was where you documented your life through photos and status updates and surveys. Using MySpace was a daily ritual. You'd come home from school and immediately log on. You'd check your comments, read your messages, look at your top 8 and wonder if you should rearrange it. You'd browse your friends' profiles, looking at their new photos, reading their bulletins, listening to their profile songs. You'd update your own profile, maybe changing your mood or adding a new photo, or tweaking your layout. You'd spend hours on the site without even realizing it, clicking from profile to profile, falling down rabbit holes of friends. This was the MySpace experience. It was messy and personal and addictive. It was self-expression and social connection and digital narcissism all rolled into one. It was learning HTML and choosing the perfect profile song and obsessing over your top 8. It was staying up too late, redesigning your layout and checking your phone, hoping someone had commented on your photos. For a few magical years, MySpace was where life happened. And then, slowly at first, and then all at once, it wasn't. No account of MySpace would be complete without talking about music. Because MySpace didn't just change social networking, it fundamentally transformed how musicians connected with audiences and how people discovered new music. For a window of time in the mid-2000s, MySpace was the most important platform in the music industry. The relationship between MySpace and music was organic and symbiotic. From the beginning, musicians were early adopters of the platform. They recognized immediately what MySpace offered: a direct line to fans, a way to share music easily, and a profile that could serve as a promotional tool. Unlike traditional methods of building a fan base, which required record label support, radio play, or extensive touring, MySpace allowed artists to reach audiences instantly and for free. MySpace understood this and leaned into it. In 2004, the company developed MySpace Music, a section of the site specifically designed for musicians and bands. Artists could create profiles that were slightly different from regular user profiles. They could upload songs that would stream directly on their profile page. They could list tour dates. They could sell merchandise. Most importantly, they could connect directly with fans, who could add the band as a friend, leave comments, send messages, and share the band's songs with their own networks. For independent and unsigned artists, this was revolutionary. Before MySpace, if you were in a band, you'd play local shows, maybe press some CDs to hand out, and hope that someone with industry connections would notice you. Distribution of your music was expensive and limited. You needed a website, but building and hosting a website cost money and required technical knowledge. Radio play was nearly impossible to get without a record deal. Even getting people to come to your shows required extensive promotion. MySpace eliminated most of these barriers. A band could set up a profile in minutes, upload their songs, and immediately have a platform that was just as accessible as major label artists' fans could find you through MySpace's search function or through recommendations from friends. If your music was good, it could spread virally through the network. One person would add you as a friend. Their friends would see you in their top 8 or hear your song, and suddenly you had a growing fan base. The impact on music discovery was massive. Before MySpace, most people discovered new music through radio, MTV, music magazines, or recommendations from friends who could play you their CDs. MySpace added a new vector: browsing profiles. You'd visit a friend's page, hear their profile song, and if you liked it, you could click through to the artist's profile. Or you'd look at your friend's top 8, see a band you didn't recognize, click on their profile out of curiosity, and discover your new favorite artist. Bands would actively engage with fans on MySpace. They'd post bulletins announcing new songs or upcoming shows. They'd reply to comments and messages. They'd add fans as friends. This created a sense of connection that was unprecedented. You could message your favorite band and actually get a response. You could leave a comment saying you loved their new song, and the drummer might reply thanking you. It made artists feel accessible and human. Some of the most famous MySpace success stories became legendary. Arctic Monkeys, a band from Sheffield, England, built their initial following almost entirely through MySpace. Fans would share their demos online. The songs would get passed around through the MySpace network. And by the time the band released their first album in 2006, they already had a massive following. Their debut became the fastest-selling debut album in British music history, largely because of the groundwork laid on MySpace. Colby Kailat, a singer-songwriter, uploaded her song Bubbly to MySpace and watched it explode in popularity. The song was played over 10 million times on MySpace before she had a record deal. Eventually, she signed with a major label, and Bubbly became a huge mainstream hit. But it started on MySpace, where she built her audience one listener at a time. Lily Allen, the British pop artist, famously used MySpace to launch her career. She uploaded demos and connected directly with fans, building a following before releasing any official music. By the time her first album came out, she was already a star on MySpace, and that translated into real-world success. Then there was Tila Tequila, who became one of the most followed people on MySpace. She wasn't even primarily a musician at first, but she used MySpace to build a massive following through her personality, photos, and music. She became famous for being famous on MySpace, which was a completely new phenomenon at the time. Her success on the platform eventually led to reality TV shows and mainstream media attention. Local bands everywhere were using MySpace to promote their shows. You'd get bulletins from bands you'd added announcing their upcoming gigs at small venues. This was especially important for the punk, emo, indie, and metal scenes, where DIY ethics and grassroots promotion were part of the culture. A band could play a show in a small town they'd never been to before and actually have people show up because they'd promoted it on MySpace. Record labels started paying attention. A&R representatives would scout talent on MySpace, looking at play counts, comments, and friend numbers to gauge an artist's potential. Having a strong MySpace presence became almost a requirement for getting signed. Labels would even check MySpace metrics as part of their decision-making process. If a band had 50,000 plays on their MySpace songs, that was data showing actual interest from real listeners. The platform also democratized music criticism and promotion. Before MySpace, if you wanted to promote a band, you'd write about them in a fanzine or maybe a blog, but your reach was limited. On MySpace, you could post a bulletin saying, "Check out this amazing band," with a link to their profile, and all your friends would see it. If enough people did this, a band could gain serious traction without any traditional media coverage. MySpace also became a place where established artists maintained their presence. Major label artists would have official MySpace profiles with their latest singles streaming. These profiles would have millions of friends and plays. It became an expected part of an album release cycle. Make sure the single is on MySpace where fans can listen and share it. The way people listen to music changed because of MySpace. Instead of buying an album or even downloading songs from iTunes, many people would just listen to music directly on MySpace profiles. The quality wasn't great, and you had to be connected to the internet, but it was free and immediate. You could build playlists by opening multiple MySpace profiles in different browser tabs, each one playing a different song. It was clunky but effective. MySpace also influenced the music itself. Bands knew their songs would be profile songs, played when someone visited a page. This created pressure to have a strong hook within the first few seconds. If your song didn't grab attention immediately, people would just click away or mute it. Many artists have said they thought about this when writing and recording. knowing that their music would often be heard in this context. The comment sections on band profiles became a kind of public fan space. People would leave enthusiastic comments, request that bands tour in their city, ask questions, share their own stories about what the music meant to them. Bands would reply, creating conversations. This was a level of artist-fan interaction that would have been impossible before. MySpace also became a hub for music networking among artists themselves. Musicians would add other musicians as friends, creating a web of connections across genres and locations. Bands would collaborate, recommend each other to fans, and build supportive communities. It wasn't uncommon for a band to discover their new favorite group through MySpace, reach out to them, and end up touring together. The platform worked particularly well for certain genres. Emo, post-hardcore, indie rock, pop-punk, and electronic music all thrived on MySpace. These genres had young internet-savvy audiences who were already spending time on the platform. The aesthetic and emotional intimacy of these genres matched well with MySpace's personal, confessional culture, bands like Panic. At the Disco, Fall Out Boy, and My Chemical Romance, while signed to labels, used MySpace brilliantly to connect with fans and build their massive followings. Rap and hip-hop artists also found success on MySpace. Independent rappers could upload their tracks, build local followings, and use the platform to promote mixtapes and shows. The low barrier to entry meant that anyone with talent and hustle could start building an audience. But MySpace music's influence went beyond just artist promotion. It changed the entire landscape of the music industry. Record labels had to adapt to a world where artists could build audiences independently. Radio became less important as a music discovery tool. Traditional music media like magazines and MTV had to compete with the organic, viral spread of music through social networks. The numbers were staggering. By 2006, there were millions of artist profiles on MySpace. Some songs had been played tens of millions of times. Major albums were being promoted through MySpace campaigns. The platform had become, in just a few years, one of the most powerful forces in music. Looking back, it's clear that MySpace music was ahead of its time. It predicted the way music would eventually be consumed in the streaming era. Instantly accessible, socially connected, with direct artist-to-fan relationships. SoundCloud, Spotify, Bandcamp, and other platforms would later build on these ideas. But MySpace did it first. For musicians who were active during this era, MySpace memories are often bittersweet. It was an incredible time of opportunity and possibility. But when MySpace declined, much of what artists had built there disappeared. Profiles were deleted or abandoned. Play counts and friend lists vanished. Years of fan connections were lost. Still, for a shining moment, MySpace was the center of the music world. It was where stars were born, where genres flourished, where fans and artists connected in ways that felt revolutionary. It changed how music works, and its influence can still be felt today, even if MySpace itself is long gone. In April 2006, MySpace achieved something remarkable. It became the most visited website in the United States, surpassing Google. Let that sink in. More people were going to MySpace than to the world's most powerful search engine. For a social networking site that was less than 3 years old, this was unprecedented. The numbers from this period are almost hard to believe. By mid-2006, MySpace had over 100 million accounts. In July 2006, the site received 20 million unique visitors in a single month in the United States alone. Users were spending an average of 80 minutes per day on the site. 80 minutes. Every single day. For context, that's more time than most people spent watching television in a single sitting. MySpace wasn't just popular. It was culturally dominant in a way that's hard to explain to anyone who wasn't there. It was the first thing people talked about at school. Teachers complained about students being distracted by MySpace. Parents worried about their kids spending too much time on MySpace. News organizations ran stories about MySpace constantly, sometimes warning about its dangers, sometimes marveling at its popularity. If you were a teenager or young adult during this time, MySpace was simply part of life. Not being on MySpace meant being socially disconnected. You'd miss out on conversations, plans, inside jokes, drama, everything. Did you see what she posted on MySpace? Was a common question. Check MySpace was the answer to, what are you doing tonight? The site's influence extended far beyond its user base. MySpace affected fashion, language, music, and culture. The MySpace aesthetic, scene hair, emo styles, vintage t-shirts, skinny jeans, Converse shoes, became mainstream bands that were huge on MySpace started getting radio play and MTV coverage. Slang and inside jokes from MySpace spread to the real world. Celebrities and public figures recognized MySpace's importance. Politicians created MySpace profiles to reach young voters. Actors and actresses used MySpace to connect with fans. Companies built MySpace pages for marketing. The 2006 midterm elections saw numerous candidates using MySpace as part of their campaigns, recognizing that this was where young people were paying attention. MySpace also became a media property in its own right. The platform partnered with content providers to stream TV shows and movies. MySpace Records was launched as an actual record label. The site began hosting its own events and concerts. MySpace was no longer just a social network. It was becoming a media empire. During this peak period, the MySpace office in Santa Monica was a buzzing hive of activity. The company was hiring aggressively. Engineers, designers, marketers, salespeople. Everyone wanted to work at the hottest internet company in the days. Oshui, in a world, the office had a rock and roll vibe that matched the site's culture. There were parties, celebrity visits, a sense that they were building something that mattered. Tom Anderson became one of the most recognizable people on the internet. His face, that default friend photo, had been seen by more people than almost any photograph in history. He gave interviews, appeared at events, and became a spokesperson for the MySpace generation. He was friendly, humble, and genuinely seemed to care about the community he'd helped create. Financially, MySpace was printing money. Advertising revenue was soaring. Companies wanted to reach MySpace's young, engaged audience. Banner ads, profile ads, sponsored content. The opportunities seemed endless. News Corporation, which had bought MySpace in 2005 for $580 million, was looking brilliant. The site was worth multiple billions of dollars. Some analysts predicted it would be worth $10 billion or more. International expansion was in full swing. MySpace launched localized versions in countries around the world. The platform was becoming global, adapting to different markets while maintaining its core features. British MySpace had a distinct flavor. Japanese MySpace had its own aesthetic, but everywhere, the fundamental experience was the same. Customize your profile, connect with friends, express yourself. This was also the period when MySpace began to shape internet culture in ways we're still seeing today. The concept of going viral became mainstream largely because of MySpace bulletins and profile sharing memes spread through MySpace before meme was a commonly used word. Internet celebrities were created through MySpace followings. The idea that ordinary people could become famous online started here. The site was also remarkably sticky. Once people joined MySpace, they kept coming back. The combination of social obligation, you had to check your comments and messages, customization, you always wanted to tweak your profile, and content, there was always something new to look at, created a powerful loop. Many people found themselves checking MySpace multiple times per day, unable to resist the pull. MySpace parties became a real-world phenomenon. People would organize meetups through MySpace, bringing online communities into physical space. These could be small gatherings of friends or massive events with hundreds of people. The line between online and offline social life was blurring, and MySpace was the bridge between them. The MySpace generation became a recognized demographic. These were young people, mostly teenagers and 20-somethings, who had grown up with the internet and were comfortable with digital social interaction. They were the first generation to live significant portions of their social lives online. Researchers, marketers, and media organizations studied them, trying to understand what this shift meant for society. But at the absolute peak of its power, MySpace made a series of decisions that would prove fatal. The company became comfortable, perhaps complacent. They assumed their dominance was permanent. They believed that users were loyal and wouldn't leave. They focused on monetization rather than innovation. They underestimated competition. In late 2006 and early 2007, there were signs that something was shifting. Users began to complain about the site becoming cluttered with advertising. The interface, which had always been chaotic, was getting worse as the company added more features without refining the design. Pages loaded slowly. Especially for users with slower internet connections, the site felt messy and overcomplicated. More ominously, there was growing chatter about a site called Facebook. It was cleaner, people said, more organized, less chaotic. It required a college email to join, which made it feel exclusive. Some early adopters were maintaining both MySpace and Facebook profiles, but they were starting to spend more time on Facebook. At the time, these seemed like minor concerns. MySpace was still growing. The numbers were still going up. Revenue was still increasing. To the people running MySpace, Facebook seemed like a niche platform for college students, not a serious threat to their dominance. This was the fatal mistake. This was the moment when MySpace peaked and began, almost imperceptibly at first, to decline. The site had become the Roman Empire of social networking, vast and powerful and seemingly invincible. But like the Roman Empire, it was about to discover that no empire lasts forever. The peak of 2006 to 2007 would soon be remembered as the moment before everything changed. MySpace had climbed to the top of the mountain, looked out at the view, and failed to notice the storm clouds gathering on the horizon. In 2007, while MySpace was still posting impressive growth numbers and claiming victory in the social networking wars, something subtle was happening. The site was still gaining users, but the quality of engagement was changing. The most active, influential users, the early adopters, the trendsetters, the people who made MySpace cool, were starting to drift away. It started with college students. Facebook, which had launched in 2004 as a Harvard-only network before expanding to other colleges, was becoming the preferred platform for university students. Facebook was cleaner, more professional looking, and it didn't have the chaos and customization of MySpace. Your profile looked like everyone else's profile, which seemed limiting at first, but was actually refreshing. No more blinding color schemes. No more auto-playing music. No more profiles that crashed your browser because someone had added too many graphics. Facebook also had a different social dynamic. MySpace felt public and performative. Your profile was a stage, and you were performing for an audience. Facebook felt more like a private community. You used your real name. You connected primarily with people you actually knew. The site encouraged authentic identity rather than curated personality. College students who joined Facebook found themselves spending more time there and less time on MySpace. They'd maintain their MySpace profiles, but wouldn't update them as often. They'd check Facebook daily, but only look at MySpace occasionally. Slowly, gradually, Facebook became where college students lived online, and MySpace became something they used to keep in touch with high school friends or follow bands. This shift might have stayed contained to colleges, but Facebook made a crucial decision in September 2006. They opened registration to anyone over 13 years old with a valid email address. Suddenly, Facebook wasn't just for college students anymore. Anyone could join, and people did, in massive numbers. At the same time, MySpace was struggling with technical and design issues. The site had always been a bit messy, but that messiness was getting worse. As MySpace tried to add more features and more advertising to increase revenue, the user experience suffered. Pages took longer to load. Navigation became more confusing. Finding specific features or information became frustrating. The customization that made MySpace special was also becoming a liability. As more users added complex layouts, videos, music players, and animations to their profiles, the site became slower and less stable. Browser crashes were common. Some profiles were essentially unusable, so overloaded with content that they'd freeze your computer. Spam and fake profiles were becoming a serious problem. Scammers created fake profiles to fish for personal information. Bots would add users as friends and send spam messages. Adult content was leaking onto the site, despite MySpace's policies. While MySpace tried to combat these issues, the site's openness and lack of strict verification made it difficult. Security concerns were also mounting. There were numerous high-profile cases of predators using MySpace to contact minors. The media ran sensational stories about the dangers of MySpace, causing parents to panic and, in some cases, forbid their children from using the site. Schools blocked MySpace on their networks. The site became associated, fairly or not, with danger and inappropriate content. MySpace's response to these challenges was often slow and inadequate. The company seemed focused on maintaining growth and revenue rather than improving the core user experience. They added more advertising, which made the site more cluttered and annoying. They tried to compete with Facebook by adding Facebook-like features, but these changes felt tacked on rather than integrated. The company's corporate culture was also showing cracks. After the News Corporation acquisition, there was tension between the original MySpace team, and the corporate overseers' decisions took longer. The startup energy that had driven MySpace's initial success was fading. The site felt less like a scrappy innovator and more like a big, slow-moving corporation. In 2007, MySpace made some baffling product decisions. They redesigned the interface in ways that confused users. They changed features that people liked without clear improvements. They seemed to be chasing trends rather than setting them. The site that had once felt cutting edge now felt behind the curve. Meanwhile, Facebook was executing perfectly. They added the news feed in 2006, which was controversial at first, but quickly became the defining feature of social networking. They opened up their platform to third-party developers, allowing apps and games to be built on Facebook. They focused relentlessly on speed, stability, and user experience. Every design decision felt intentional and polished. The differences were stark. MySpace felt like a cluttered teenage bedroom. Facebook felt like a well-organized living room. MySpace was chaos and self-expression. Facebook was order and connection. MySpace was about who you wanted to be. Facebook was about who you actually were. By late 2007, the migration was accelerating. High school students, MySpace's core demographic, were joining Facebook. They'd send friend requests to their MySpace friends on Facebook. Gradually, conversations moved from MySpace messages to Facebook messages. Photos were uploaded to Facebook instead of MySpace. The top 8 stopped mattering because Facebook didn't have one. MySpace tried to respond. They made attempts to clean up the site, to streamline the interface, to compete with Facebook's features. But they were always reacting rather than leading. The Facebook would launch a feature, and months later, MySpace would launch something similar. But by then, Facebook had already moved on to the next innovation. The cultural momentum was shifting too. Being on MySpace stopped being cool. Facebook became the sophisticated choice. MySpace was for kids and scene kids, and people who hadn't figured out that Facebook was better. This narrative wasn't entirely fair, but perception became reality. In 2008, something remarkable happened. Facebook surpassed MySpace in monthly unique visitors. The king was dead. The new king had arrived. MySpace would continue to exist, would even maintain a large user base for years, but it would never again be the center of the social media universe. What's fascinating is how quickly the shift happened once it started. In 2006, MySpace seemed invincible. By 2008, it was clearly losing. The network effects that had made MySpace powerful, everyone was on it, so you had to be on it too, now worked in reverse. As people left for Facebook, their friends followed. The more empty MySpace became, the less reason anyone had to stay. Users began to abandon their MySpace profiles. They'd leave them up, but stop updating them. These ghost profiles accumulated, digital tombstones marking where someone's online life used to be. The comment section stopped growing. The bulletins stopped flowing. The profile songs kept auto-playing, but fewer people were around to hear them. For those who were there, who watched this happen in real time, it was surreal. The site that had been essential that you checked multiple times per day gradually became irrelevant. It was like watching a vibrant city slowly empty out as residents moved to a new place. The buildings were still there, but the life was gone. MySpace had been the king of social networking for only about 3 years, from 2004 to 2007. 3 years at the top of the internet world. 3 years of cultural dominance. And then it was over. Not with a bang, but with a slow, sad fade into irrelevance. To understand MySpace's fall, you have to understand Facebook's rise. These two companies were on opposite trajectories, and the point where they crossed marked one of the most significant shifts in internet history. Facebook launched in February 2004, about 6 months after MySpace. It was created by Mark Zuckerberg and his Harvard classmates as a social network. Exclusively for Harvard students, the concept was simple. A digital version of the physical Facebook, the book of student photos and names that colleges distributed to incoming freshmen. You could create a profile, add friends, share information, and connect with other students. What made Facebook different from the beginning was its exclusivity and its insistence on real identity. You had to have a harvard.edu email address to join. Your profile used your real name. There was no room for anonymity or creating alternate personas. This made Facebook feel more legitimate and trustworthy than MySpace, where anyone could be anyone. Facebook expanded methodically to other elite universities, then to all universities, then to high schools, and finally to the general public. In September 2006, each expansion was carefully controlled. This created a sense of anticipation and desire. People wanted to join Facebook because they couldn't yet join Facebook. The design philosophy was completely opposite to MySpace. Where MySpace allowed unlimited customization, Facebook enforced uniformity. Every profile looked the same. You could change your profile picture and add information, but you couldn't change colors, fonts, layouts, or add auto-playing music. At first, this seemed like a limitation. Many MySpace users looked at Facebook and thought it was boring and restrictive. But this uniformity was actually Facebook's secret weapon. It made the site fast, stable, and predictable. You knew exactly where to find information on any profile, because every profile was organized the same way. There was no visual chaos, no pages that were unreadable, no songs blasting unexpectedly. Facebook was clean, efficient, and professional. The news feed, launched in September 2006, revolutionized social networking. Instead of having to visit individual profiles to see what was new, Facebook aggregated all your friends' activities into a single scrolling stream. You could see everything at once. Who updated their status, who posted photos, who became friends with whom. It was addictive in a way that MySpace never quite managed. The news feed was controversial when it launched. Users complained about privacy, about the feeling of being watched, about how much information was being broadcast. But the complaints died down quickly because the newsfeed was just so useful and engaging. It became the template for every social media platform that followed. Facebook also made strategic decisions about openness and development. In 2007, they launched the Facebook platform, which allowed third-party developers to create applications that ran within Facebook. This led to an explosion of games, quizzes, and apps. Suddenly, Facebook wasn't just a place to connect with friends. It was a platform for entertainment and engagement. Farmville, Mafia Wars, and countless quiz apps kept users on Facebook for hours. MySpace tried to compete with these innovations, but they were always playing catch-up. MySpace launched their own newsfeed-like feature, but it felt clunky compared to Facebook's MySpace tried to create a platform for developers, but it never gained the traction that Facebook's did. Everything MySpace did in this period felt reactive, like they were copying Facebook rather than innovating themselves. Facebook's growth was explosive. Once they opened to the general public in 2006, users flooded in. Parents joined to keep up with their kids. Co-workers joined to stay connected. Old friends joined to reconnect. College alumni joined to see what their classmates were up to. Facebook's simple question, "What's on your mind?" invited constant sharing and engagement. The demographic shift was crucial. Facebook captured adults in a way MySpace never did. While MySpace was seen as a platform for teenagers, Facebook felt appropriate for all ages. Professionals could use Facebook for networking. Adults could use it to keep in touch with family. This broader appeal meant Facebook could grow beyond MySpace's reach. Facebook also avoided many of the problems that plagued MySpace. Because Facebook required real names and had better security systems, there was less spam, fewer fake profiles, and generally a safer environment. Parents who were worried about their kids on MySpace felt more comfortable with Facebook. Schools and workplaces that blocked MySpace often allowed Facebook. The technical execution was also superior. Facebook was fast. Pages loaded quickly, even for users with slower internet connections. The site rarely crashed. Updates and changes were rolled out smoothly. Facebook felt like a well-oiled machine, while MySpace often felt like it was held together with duct tape. But perhaps the most significant difference was in the user experience philosophy. MySpace was about self-expression and identity creation. Your MySpace profile was a canvas where you could be whoever you wanted to be. Facebook was about authentic connection and staying up to date with the real people in your life. These were fundamentally different visions of what a social network should be. For a while, many people maintained both profiles. They'd use MySpace for music discovery and creative expression, and Facebook for staying connected with friends and family. But maintaining two social networks was time-consuming and redundant. Eventually, people had to choose, and increasingly, they chose Facebook. The tipping point came around 2007 and 2008. That's when you started seeing comments on MySpace profiles saying, "I'm not on here anymore, find me on Facebook." That's when bulletins would go out saying, "I'm moving to Facebook, add me there." The migration was visible and accelerating. By 2008, Facebook had overtaken MySpace in global users. By 2009, the gap was widening rapidly. Facebook had won the social networking war, and it wasn't even close anymore. MySpace became the cautionary tale, the company that had everything and lost it all to a faster, smarter competitor. What's remarkable is that MySpace saw this coming and couldn't stop it. They tried to compete. They copied features. They redesigned the site multiple times. They hired new leadership. They attempted to pivot and reinvent themselves. But once the momentum shifted to Facebook, it was like trying to stop an avalanche with your bare hands. The MySpace to Facebook migration became one of the fastest and most complete platform shifts in internet history. Within just a few years, Facebook went from being the upstart challenger to being the undisputed king of social media. And MySpace went from being the most visited website in America to being a ghost town, a relic of an earlier internet era. For users who lived through this transition, it was strange and melancholy. You were leaving behind profiles you'd spent years building, connections you'd carefully cultivated, and memories embedded in comments and photos. But everyone was leaving, so you had to leave too. The party was over at MySpace, and everyone was moving to the new venue. Facebook wasn't better than MySpace in every way. It was less creative, less personal, less expressive, but it was more practical, more efficient, more aligned with how people wanted to use social media as they got older. MySpace was adolescence, messy, emotional, creative, chaotic. Facebook was adulthood, organized, professional, purposeful, clean. The internet had grown up, and it had chosen Facebook over MySpace. The age of customization and chaos was giving way to the age of uniformity and efficiency. For better or worse, Facebook represented the future, and MySpace was now the past. The decline of MySpace between 2008 and 2010 was swift and brutal. In April 2008, Facebook overtook MySpace in worldwide unique visitors for the first time. That month became the symbolic moment when the throne changed hands, but the actual decline had been happening for months before that, and it would accelerate dramatically in the months after. The numbers tell a stark story. In December 2008, MySpace still had about 75 million monthly active users in the United States. By December 2009, that number had dropped to about 57 million. By December 2010, it was down to 35 million. These weren't just people slowing down their usage. They were leaving entirely, deleting or abandoning their accounts, moving their social lives to Facebook and other platforms. But the raw numbers don't capture the emotional reality of what it felt like to watch MySpace die. If you were still logging into MySpace in 2009 or 2010, you saw a landscape of digital decay. Friend lists full of people who hadn't logged in for months or years. Comment sections that stopped growing months ago. Bulletins from 2007 still sitting at the top of feeds because no one was posting new ones. Profile songs still auto-playing to empty rooms. It felt like walking through an abandoned amusement park. All the structures were still there. The profiles, the comments, the photos. But the people were gone. The life had drained out of the site, leaving only architecture and memories. You'd log in hoping to find some activity, some sign that people were still there. But instead, you'd find silence and absence. The cultural perception of MySpace shifted dramatically during this period. What had once been cool became deeply uncool. MySpace became associated with spam, abandoned profiles, emo kids who hadn't gotten the memo, and desperate bands still trying to make it. Being active on MySpace in 2009 was seen as out of touch, like still using a Discman when everyone had moved to iPods. Jokes about MySpace became common. "I'll add you on MySpace" became a punchline. Tom Anderson, once the friendly face of social networking, became the subject of memes about being forgotten. "Remember when we all had MySpace?" became a way to mark yourself as someone who'd been around for the early internet, like saying, "Remember when MTV played music videos?" MySpace's corporate struggles mirrored the user exodus. In 2009, News Corporation, which had bought MySpace for $580 million in 2005, laid off about 30% of MySpace's staff. The company brought in new CEO Owen Van Natter from Facebook, ironically, to try to turn things around. He implemented more layoffs and attempted to refocus the company. The attempts to save MySpace were numerous and increasingly desperate. In 2009, MySpace redesigned the site to look more like Facebook, with a cleaner interface and a stream of updates similar to Facebook's newsfeed, but this backfired. MySpace users who remained loyal had stayed because they liked MySpace's customization and personality. Making it look like Facebook just reminded them of how much better Facebook was, and it removed the unique features that gave MySpace its identity. MySpace tried to rebrand itself as a music and entertainment destination rather than a pure social network. This made some sense. MySpace music had always been a strength, and the platform still had a large catalogue of bands and artists. But music streaming was also getting competitive, with Spotify launching in Europe in 2008 and expanding globally. MySpace was late to recognize this shift, and when they did pivot toward music, they were already behind. In 2010, MySpace underwent another major redesign, attempting to modernize and compete with Twitter and Facebook simultaneously. The new design was sleeker and more media-focused, but it alienated the remaining users and didn't attract new ones. It felt like MySpace had lost its identity completely, trying to be everything to everyone and ending up being nothing to anyone. The spam and security problems that had always plagued MySpace got worse as the user base declined. With fewer legitimate users and less oversight, scammers and spammers took over large sections of the site. Fake profiles proliferated. Phishing attempts became common. The site started to feel unsafe and unreliable. Musicians and bands who had been some of MySpace's most loyal users began abandoning the platform too. They'd built followings on MySpace, but those followings were disappearing as fans moved to Facebook, Twitter, and other platforms. Bands started treating their MySpace pages as afterthoughts, updating them rarely and focusing their energy on social media platforms where audiences actually existed. One of the saddest aspects of MySpace's decline was the loss of digital memory. As users abandoned their profiles, years of photos, comments, blog posts, and personal history were left behind. Some people tried to save their MySpace photos and content before leaving, but many didn't. When MySpace eventually redesigned and migrated to new systems, huge amounts of content was lost permanently. Years of internet history, personal and cultural, simply vanished. By 2010, MySpace had fallen from being the most visited website in America to being an also-ran in the social media space. Facebook had over 500 million users. Twitter was growing rapidly. YouTube was the default platform for video. Instagram would launch that year and quickly gain traction. MySpace had maybe 50 million active users globally, a fraction of its peak, and most of those were barely active. News Corporation, realizing they'd lost the social networking battle, began looking to sell MySpace. The company they'd bought for $580 million just 5 years earlier was now worth a fraction of that. It was a stunning reversal of fortune, one of the biggest business failures of the internet era. For the people who had been there from the beginning, who had spent their teenage years building elaborate profiles and cultivating their top 8. Watching MySpace die was genuinely sad. It wasn't just a website shutting down. It was a piece of their personal history fading away. Those profiles represented who they were at a specific moment in their lives, and now that moment was disappearing. The decline of MySpace happened faster than anyone could have predicted. In just 3 years, from 2008 to 2010, the site went from king of the internet to irrelevant afterthought. It was a reminder that dominance in tech is always temporary, that users are fickle, and that staying on top requires constant innovation and attention to what users actually want. MySpace's failure to compete with Facebook would be studied in business schools for years as a case study in how quickly fortunes can reverse in the tech industry. The company that had defined social networking for millions of people was now a cautionary tale, a reminder that nothing lasts forever on the internet. In June 2011, News Corporation sold MySpace to Specific Media, an advertising network, for approximately $35 million. Read that again. $35 million, a property that News Corp had purchased for $580 million just 6 years earlier, was now worth less than 6% of that amount. It was one of the most dramatic value destructions in internet history. The sale was accompanied by an investment from Justin Timberlake, the pop star, who took a minority stake and became involved in the company's creative direction. This generated some media attention and briefly made people wonder if MySpace could be revived. Timberlake's involvement suggested a focus on music and entertainment, playing to MySpace's remaining strengths. But the excitement faded quickly. Under new ownership, MySpace underwent yet another redesign in 2012. This version was sleeker, more modern, more focused on music discovery and streaming. The redesign was actually quite nice from a design perspective. Clean, visually appealing, with good integration of music and video content. But it was too late. The user base was gone. The cultural moment had passed. The most tragic aspect of the 2012 redesign was that it required migrating to a completely new platform, and in the process, massive amounts of user data was lost. Photos, blog posts, comments, messages. Years of user-generated content disappeared. MySpace claimed that old content would be preserved and migrated, but many users discovered that their old profiles were simply gone. Years of memories erased. This data loss became a source of genuine grief for many people. Those MySpace photos were often the only copies. Those comments represented actual conversations with friends who might no longer be in your life. Those blog posts captured thoughts and feelings from a specific time. When that content disappeared, it wasn't just data being lost. It was personal history being erased. The 2012 to 2013 version of MySpace tried to position itself as a music discovery platform, competing with Spotify, Pandora, and SoundCloud. It had some interesting features: integration with radio stations, music streaming, artist profiles. But the name MySpace carried too much baggage. People associated it with the past, with failure, with abandoned profiles and emo kids from 2006. No amount of redesigning could shake that association. A few artists and musicians maintained MySpace presences during this period, but mostly out of nostalgia or completeness, rather than because it was useful. Most bands and musicians had moved to Facebook, Twitter, Bandcamp, SoundCloud, and eventually Instagram and Spotify. MySpace's moment as the center of music discovery was long over. Time Inc. acquired MySpace in 2016 for an undisclosed amount, believed to be substantially less than the $35 million Specific Media had paid. By this point, MySpace was essentially a curiosity, a piece of internet history that somehow still existed but had no real relevance. The site limped along with minimal staff and even more minimal user engagement. In 2019, MySpace suffered another catastrophic data loss, this time losing 12 years' worth of music files uploaded by artists between 2003 and 2015. Approximately 50 million songs by 14 million artists were lost due to what MySpace claimed was a server migration error. This was devastating for artists who had only uploaded their music to MySpace and never backed it up elsewhere. Entire catalogues of early work, demos, and recordings vanished. The 2019 data loss felt like the final insult. MySpace had already failed as a business, already lost its user base, already destroyed most user profiles in the 2012 migration. Now it had lost the one thing it still had value for, its music archive. Years of music history, much of it from independent artists who never made it big, but whose work deserved preservation, was simply gone. Today, MySpace still technically exists. You can still visit the website, but it's a shell of what it once was, barely functional, rarely updated, with almost no active users. It's become a digital ghost town, a museum piece, a reminder of how quickly things can change on the internet. The aftermath of MySpace's fall rippled through the tech industry in various ways. For users, there was a widespread realization about the impermanence of digital content. People learned the hard way that you can't trust a platform to preserve your memories. This led to more awareness about backing up data and not relying solely on third-party services. For the tech industry, MySpace became the cautionary tale. Every social media platform, every tech company that reaches dominance is reminded, you could be the next MySpace. No matter how big you get, no matter how unbeatable you seem, you can fall. Twitter, Snapchat, TikTok, every platform that's faced challenges has been compared to MySpace, warned that they might follow the same path to irrelevance. The story also highlighted the importance of user experience over features. MySpace had plenty of features, maybe too many, but Facebook won because it had a better user experience, faster, cleaner, more reliable. In tech, it's not always about having the most features. It's about having the right features executed well. Tom Anderson, MySpace's co-founder and everyone's first friend, handled the decline with grace. After leaving MySpace in 2009, he largely retired from the tech industry. He became a travel photographer, posting beautiful photos on Instagram and living what appeared to be a peaceful, fulfilling life. When people mocked MySpace or made jokes about him, he responded with humor and perspective. He didn't seem bitter about MySpace's failure. He seemed grateful for the experience and happy to move on. In interviews and social media posts, Anderson has been reflective about MySpace's rise and fall. He acknowledges mistakes but also takes pride in what MySpace accomplished. For a few years, the site connected millions of people, helped launch music careers, and gave a generation their first experience with social networking. That matters. even if the company ultimately failed. Chris DeWolf, the other co-founder, went on to start other companies and remain active in tech and entertainment. He's spoken about MySpace as a learning experience, about the importance of adapting to change and not getting complacent. The lessons from MySpace's failure informed his subsequent ventures. For News Corporation, the MySpace acquisition and subsequent loss was an expensive lesson about internet businesses. Media conglomerates learned that buying hot tech companies doesn't guarantee success if you don't understand the culture and can't move quickly enough to adapt. The MySpace failure made News Corp more cautious about future tech investments. The employees who worked at MySpace during its peak often speak about it fondly. Despite the eventual failure, working at MySpace in 2005 or 2006 felt like being at the center of something important. They were building a product that millions of people used every day. That's a rare experience, and many former MySpace employees went on to successful careers in tech, bringing the lessons they learned with them. The fall of MySpace cleared the way for the social media landscape we have today. Facebook became dominant, but other platforms emerged to fill different niches. Twitter for short-form updates and news, Instagram for photos, YouTube for video, LinkedIn for professional networking, Snapchat for ephemeral content, TikTok for short-form video. The internet became more fragmented, with different platforms serving different purposes rather than one site trying to do everything. In some ways, this fragmentation is healthier than MySpace's attempted monopoly. It prevents any single platform from having too much power. It allows for innovation in different areas. But it also means that our online identities are spread across multiple platforms, making it harder to have a unified online presence the way MySpace once provided. The physical spaces where MySpace was built also tell part of the story. The Santa Monica offices where MySpace reached its peak were eventually occupied by other tech companies. The conference rooms where critical decisions were made, the desks where the code was written, the spaces where the parties happened. They're all still there, but they're used by different companies now, working on different products. The physical space remains, but the magic is gone. Some of MySpace's technical innovations lived on in other platforms. The idea of customizable profiles influenced platforms like Tumblr. The direct artist-to-fan connection model shaped SoundCloud and Bandcamp. The Top Friends concept appeared in various forms on other social networks. MySpace's DNA is scattered throughout the modern internet, even if the platform itself is dead. The fall of MySpace also marked the end of a certain kind of internet culture. The MySpace era was characterized by chaos, creativity, self-expression, and a certain DIY ethos. You could make your profile look however you wanted, even if it looked terrible. You could be whoever you wanted to be. The internet that came after, dominated by Facebook and its clean, uniform aesthetic, was more polished, but also more controlled and less personal. There's genuine nostalgia for MySpace now, particularly among people who were teenagers during its peak. That nostalgia isn't necessarily about wanting MySpace back. It's about mourning a time when the internet felt more wild and free, when social media was new and exciting rather than exhausting and algorithmic. MySpace represents a specific moment in internet history that can never be recreated. In the end, MySpace's fall was complete and irreversible. The company that had been the most popular website in America that had defined social networking for millions of people, that had changed how music was discovered and how young people connected, was reduced to an afterthought, a punchline, a lesson in how quickly fortunes can change in the digital age. Today, when people talk about MySpace, it's almost always with nostalgia. The harsh judgments, the mockery, the sense that it was hopelessly uncool. Those have faded with time. What remains is a warm, slightly embarrassed affection for a platform that was deeply flawed, but also deeply meaningful to millions of people. MySpace occupies a unique place in internet history. It was the first social network that truly went mainstream. The first to make social networking a central part of everyday life for young people. Before MySpace, social networking sites existed, but they were niche. After MySpace, social networking became fundamental to how we use the internet. MySpace was the bridge between the old internet and the new one. The platform pioneered many features that seem obvious now, but were revolutionary at the time. The idea of a customizable profile, the ability to share photos and music easily, the concept of a friends list, the integration of messaging and public comments, the ability to follow and be followed. MySpace did all of this first, or at least did it first at scale. Every social media platform that came after built on foundations that MySpace laid. MySpace also proved that social networking could be big business. The $580 million acquisition by News Corporation validated social media as a valuable industry. This paved the way for the massive valuations of Facebook, Twitter, and other social platforms. Venture capitalists who might have been skeptical about social networking saw MySpace's success and started funding competitors and alternatives. For the music industry, MySpace's legacy is particularly significant. The platform fundamentally changed how artists connect with audiences and how music is discovered. Before MySpace, unsigned artists had almost no way to reach large audiences. After MySpace, the direct-to-fan model became not just possible, but expected. MySpace proved that you didn't need a record label, didn't need radio play, didn't need MTV to build a following. This democratization of music distribution continues today through platforms like SoundCloud, Bandcamp, and Spotify. Many successful artists got their start or got a major boost from MySpace. Arctic Monkeys, Lily Allen, Colby Kylat, Kate Nash, Calvin Harris. These artists and many others used MySpace to build their early followings. Some of them might have made it anyway, but MySpace accelerated their success and changed their trajectories. For every artist who became famous through MySpace, there were thousands who built small but devoted followings, who connected with fans around the world, who got to experience what it felt like to have people care about their music. MySpace also influenced internet culture in ways that are still visible. The aesthetic of mid-2000s internet culture, emo, and scene fashion, the specific way people posed for photos, the language and the humor of that era, was heavily shaped by MySpace memes and viral content spread through MySpace bulletins before Twitter and Instagram existed. Internet celebrities were created through MySpace before YouTube made that common. The educational impact of MySpace is often overlooked. An entire generation learned basic HTML and CSS because they wanted to customize their MySpace profiles. They learned by doing, by copying code, by experimenting and seeing what worked. Many people who went on to careers in web development or design got their start customizing MySpace profiles as teenagers. This unintentional coding education was one of MySpace's most valuable but unplanned contributions. MySpace also taught important lessons about digital literacy and online privacy, sometimes the hard way. The platform's openness and the fact that profiles were generally public meant that many young people learned about the permanence of online content and the importance of being careful about what you share. The drama around top 8 rankings taught lessons about how online actions have real-world consequences. The experience of curating a profile taught people about crafting an online identity. The nostalgia for MySpace is particularly strong among people who were teenagers in the mid-2000s. For them, MySpace isn't just a defunct social network. It's tied up with memories of high school, first loves, figuring out identity, staying up too late on the computer. Looking back at old MySpace profiles, when they still exist, is like looking at a yearbook or diary from adolescence. It's embarrassing and cringy, but also touching and meaningful. There's something bittersweet about MySpace nostalgia. People miss the creativity and freedom of the platform, the sense that you could make your corner of the internet truly your own. They miss the specific aesthetic and culture of that era. They miss being young in a time when social media was new and exciting, rather than exhausting and ubiquitous. But there's also recognition that you can't go back, that MySpace belongs to a specific moment that has passed. Some people have tried to recreate the MySpace experience. There have been platforms that promise to bring back the customization and personal expression of MySpace, but they never quite capture the magic because the context is different. MySpace worked partly because it was new, partly because it was where everyone was, partly because it existed at a specific moment in internet history. You can't recreate those conditions. The data loss that MySpace suffered, both in 2012 and 2019, adds another layer to its legacy. So much personal and cultural history was lost. Photos, blog posts, comments, music, entire digital lives erased. This made MySpace's legacy more painful, but also more mythical. When you can't go back and look at your old profile, when the evidence of what it was like is gone, memory becomes more important. People's recollections of MySpace, filtered through time and nostalgia, become the primary record of what it meant. There have been occasional calls to preserve MySpace content, to archive what remains before it disappears entirely. The Internet Archive has saved some MySpace pages, but most are gone. Future historians and researchers who want to understand mid-2000s internet culture will find huge gaps where MySpace used to be. This loss of digital heritage is one of MySpace's most unfortunate legacies. MySpace's story is ultimately a very human one. It's about people trying to connect, to express themselves, to be seen and heard. It's about creativity and identity and community. It's about the excitement of something new and the sadness of watching it fade away. It's about making mistakes, learning lessons, and moving forward. The platform may be dead, but its impact lives on. Every time you customize a profile on a website, every time you share music on social media, every time you curate your online identity, you're doing something that MySpace helped make normal. The specific site is gone, but the behaviors and expectations it created are now fundamental to how we use the internet. For those who were there, who spent hours picking the perfect top 8, or choosing profile songs, or learning HTML to make their pages look cool, MySpace will always hold a special place. It wasn't perfect. It made many mistakes. But for a few years, it was our space. A digital home where we could figure out who we were and connect with others doing the same. MySpace taught us that nothing on the internet lasts forever, that dominance is temporary, that users will always move on to the next thing. But it also showed us the power of giving people tools to express themselves, the importance of community and connection, and the way technology can capture specific cultural moments. The rise and fall of MySpace is one of the defining stories of the internet age. It's a tale of innovation and imitation, of success and failure, of building something meaningful and watching it slip away. It's a reminder that in technology, as in life, nothing stays the same. Everything changes, everything ends. But what we built there, the connections we made, the memories we created, the version of ourselves we presented to the world, those things mattered. They're part of our personal histories, part of internet history, part of the story of how we learned to live online. MySpace may be gone, but it will never be forgotten. Thanks for the ad, Tom. Thanks for giving us a space to be ourselves, even if just for a little while. Thanks for being everyone's first friend in the strange, exciting, terrifying adventure of living life online. The story of MySpace is over, but the memories, the lessons, and the impact remain. And somewhere, on an abandoned server, a profile song is still auto-playing, waiting for someone who will never come back to hear it.